All right, welcome to ATW Live Monday. I'm Matt Taibbi.
And I'm Walter Kern.
Walter, what's going on?
You mean in my life or in general?
Well, we haven't talked like personally about your life. Is everything cool?
No, it's falling apart, man. I'm sorry. Uh, I didn't tell you about the diagnosis. Um,
No,
no,
this
well,
better
no,
be not be true.
I'm so good at this. I'm so good at Minnesota dry humor that you would never know until I'd been telling you for half an hour about the diagnosis and difficulties that I'm experiencing financially. And
Right.
yeah, some of the environmental challenges I'm facing here in Montana. No, what I'm going to say is that everything's going great for me and strangely for everyone else. I just got back from my secret conclave in Hartford, Connecticut,
Mm-hmm.
with other thought leaders of the extremely independent variety, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people for whom the Overton window is, but a distant memory. We care so little about how, fitting through it. Anyway, I went to the Mark Twain House in Hartford, and
One of my favorite places.
you've been there,
Oh, I've spoken there a couple of times. Great people.
really?
Yeah. I've taken the kids there. One of the great places. If you have I'm sure you had the same experience. Fascinating.
Well, it
Yeah.
is one of the great places, and it's worth a moment of description and reflection before we dive into PSYOP Nation, as far as I can see it.
Well, we
Uh,
also have like breaking, crazy, possibly world-shaking events happening, which we'll cut to in a
it's
second.
gonna be a big night because it's a combination of real, maybe real, and absolutely unreal.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, at the Mark Twain House, you get to see Mark Twain's uh, uh, sort of personal home that built to his specifications. He lived there for a while at a time when Hartford was a very prosperous town. In some ways, it rivaled New York City back when he lived there in the 1880s because steel that allowed the building of skyscrapers had not yet turned Manhattan and New York City into the premier American city. But over there in Hartford, they had, the insurance industry and all sorts of other, 19th century economic engines. Connecticut was still a manufacturing center and so on. So you go to this wonderful big house that Twain constructed for himself, and you go through it in the order of you go through it like you would go through the rooms if you were visiting Mark Twain back in 1885. Say you were, Oliver Wendell Holmes or one of his high status guests. You come
Right.
in, you see the waiting room, then you sit in the parlor. The curtains are opened, and then there is the table where you're going to sit for dinner. Mark Twain at that table would tell the same stories every single night in the exact same order, with such clockwork that his wife and children and people who weren't in the room could tell exactly what course they were eating by where Twain was. So he lived a completely artificial social life in this house, and he would get up and he would tell these stories, and he had a repertoire, and his kids and wife had a system of colored cards that they would use to signal him discreetly while the guests watched him, walk around and gesture, because he would get up from the table at a certain point to sort of free himself to gesture. And they would use these cards to signal, Dad, you're boring them, or you know, Dad, slow it down, or, Dad, don't tell the next one. And Twain knew this code and could adjust his performance accordingly. So,
I'm glad that
uh,
my family feels free to just say that stuff to me out loud. But anyway, go ahead.
well, maybe if Oliver Wendell Holmes or
Right.
uh, some reverend or the Beecher Stows or other people were over, they would want to be more discreet. So it's basically a kick under the table, but there are 20 different kicks and they all mean different things. And I reflected that, did each dinner guests know that they were getting exactly what the dinner guest of the night before had gotten. Exactly. Well, they probably didn't, or Twain, wouldn't have at least clued them in on it. He was acting as though you were getting my very best.
Right.
And it reminded me that storytelling and performance and drama are improved by rehearsal and by practice, and that a new audience can be enchanted and absolutely thrilled by the exact same performance another one got, as long as they don't come twice.
Right.
As long as they don't visit 2 nights in a row. And I think you'll see how that applies to what we're going to talk about tonight, about these big mega stories that are proliferating now in the pre-Trump inauguration period, that have the character of semi-rehearsed or at least somewhat artificial narratives.
Possibly, yeah. Wow, that was that was a store style comeback to
that's what Trump
events.
That's what Trump calls the weave.
The weave, right?
Yeah, a weave.
Well, we'll get to all of that, and actually, I have some thoughts about the Twain House inside. Again, it's one of my favorite places, and it was a big surprise to me when I went there. But I won't get into that now. So one of the big stories in the world right now is that, and this is just so bizarre, since I'm so used to kind of losing on the political front for years and years and years, just watching political figures I can't stand faceplant all over the world. Justin Trudeau is hanging by a thread right now in Canada, to the point where it could happen during this show that his government could fall. He is currently being savaged by members of parliament, I think live as we speak, and some of those performances are just utterly hilarious. If we could, maybe let's just look at a little bit of the stuff that's happening in the House of Commons, starting with a PM named, let's see, it's Michelle Garner. She just, anyway, before we run that, the backstory here is that Trudeau last week gave a big speech about how America is backward because it didn't elect a female president, and he is an unapologetic feminist, and blah blah blah. And then today, essentially, he fired Chrystia Freeland, the deputy prime minister, a former colleague of mine in Moscow. Although she seems to have resigned technically, but it's really a dispute over how they're going to deal with the threat of tariffs from Trump. Anyway, everybody's furious with Trudeau, in his party, out of his party, and they are just kicking his ass
for letting her go, or
for letting her go. I think it's sort of a last straw kind of thing, and this shit is fun. Like watching Canadians get bare their teeth is some funny shit. Let's roll this if we can.
The honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill.
For weeks, the Prime Minister has been repeating over and over again that a Team Canada approach is about knowing the time to do the right thing. But he sure doesn't understand that point, does he? Multiple cabinet ministers have resigned, including the finance minister, on the day she was supposed to deliver the disastrous Liberal budget update. In her resignation letter, she said the government needed to issue costly political gimmicks and that the Liberals are focused on themselves and not working for Canadians. And yet the Prime Minister refuses to call an election. And the weak and self-interested NDP and Liberal backbench are complicit in his decimation of our country, propping him up while he pulls Canadians from one disaster to another. How many more deaths in the streets will it take for them to admit that it's over? How many more violent demonstrations, business closures, lost jobs, lost homes, encampments of refugees in Canada's suburbs, tariff wars with allies? One man's ego is not worth this cost. No single person matters more than our country. Team Canada wants the Prime Minister to take his own advice and do the right thing. Call an election now. Let's bring it home.
there's more from her at some other point, but then there's a guy named Darren Fisher who basically does like Canadian 8 Mile. It's like Eminem, but in Parliament. I've never really seen anything like this. We don't have rhyming members of Congress in the United States, so especially not ones wearing green velour jackets. So if we can find him, that would be very fun.
I see that the honorable member from Dartmouth Cole Harbour is wearing his finery today, so I can only imagine what this is about. Certain all members will want to get their attention. The honorable member.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I think we can all use a little chuckle today. So with that, I'm proud to deliver this year's Liberal Christmas roast. It was a week before Christmas. Conservative MPs were muzzled. Our investments in housing have old PP puzzled. Their party won't talk about foreign interference. For Christmas, will their leader get his security clearance? Dental care, child care, what more could there be? School food and pharmacare. Thanks to the NDP. They tore up our deal, they started to gloat. But guess what happened on the next confidence vote? Supply management and seniors, the Bloc has lots to say. I don't really understand, Mr. Speaker. Je ne parle pas français. To calm caucus rebels, we cut the GST. A small gift from the Liberals and me. Groceries are high, there's trouble with the mail. But we still have a chance to win Cloverdale?
I don't understand these jokes, but they're hilarious anyway.
Now, Mr. Speaker, it's not a contest, so I don't mean to brag. But it's only our leader whose name is on a flag. One final thought, though, Mr. Speaker. One final thought, though. Canada ain't broke, though I will admit we may be a bit woke. Mr. Speaker, colleagues, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, too. May we all get a Christmas card from a Randy or two.
Matt,
I have no idea
was he a liberal or a conservative?
I think he's a conservative, but it's still funny.
Well, okay. First of all, I used to be a poet. No one will be surprised. I used to be everything, and that's why I'm on this show. And these guys always rhyme, but their problem is the other element, is the scanning, the meter. They will jam 100 words into a line where 17 should be, and and still think they've brought off a wonderful, witty, poetic piece of verse.
Right.
So all the things they were smiling at and applauding in Walter Kern universe were fails. Get your poetry to be scannable and your lines to be at least roughly the same length.
Yeah, but doesn't that make it funnier? It makes it a little funnier for me.
Yeah, the guy is so satisfied with his performance, though, and the people are just. There was a guy there with eyebrows that you can see at 100 yards, rolling his eyebrows, just completely delighted. None of it was delightful, but I have no idea what the content meant. What I will say is that we don't get to do this with our own government. We don't get this sort of aquarium eye view where we don't really, we don't really know the people, and we can just assess it as though we're like a Martian ambassador. And if I was the Martian ambassador to Canada looking at them all, I'd say, your finance minister just resigned. She was supposed to present the budget. She didn't. You're facing these tariffs, which look like they could be ruinous for you if you don't do anything about them. And you're turning it into a children's book. That means to me, you're screwed. Okay.
Right. Yes.
If I had to run out to the phone and report to the mothership, it's the strangest thing. Their party is falling apart. Their government is falling apart. Their economy is falling apart. And they're laughing at very bad poetry. And they're completely contented with themselves. This has Titanic vibes. You know what I mean? This is a toast to the Queen and you just see the water coming up to their waists.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly they're playing the violin on the deck. Look, the news out of Canada is grave.
He was a liberal, someone tells us.
Yeah,
See, Matt?
exactly.
That's
yeah.
how bad we see. Remember when he said we are a bit woke? He was willing to concede that.
Yes.
In other words, the reason he was being so jocular and amusing and dinner theater and Dr. Seuss, as someone said, which was right on, is that he's on the losing side and is facing the obliteration of his party's influence and rule. And this is the best he's got. We're a little woke.
I mean, you might as well just take it all off and start dancing at that point, which is what that's the Canadian version of what that was, I think.
Right.
You know, and to be serious, you know, I was reading the CBC account of what's going on, and there were obviously there's a lot of sort of grave signs of defections and that sort of thing. The one that I thought was striking was from the Québécois bloc. I think his name is Yves-François Blanchet or Blanchet or whatever. But basically said this government's over, which is a fairly extreme thing to say. And these sort of calls to have elections immediately. I mean, I think it was expected that this would be next October, but there are sort of rumors that he's considering his options. That was another thing that I saw in the news today. So you know, the ground is kind of coming out from underneath them. Can we watch that clip? Is that possible? Is that let's see. Yeah,
Trudeau's government is over. He must acknowledge that and act accordingly. I believe that the departure of his so important ally, Minister of Finances, Vice First Minister, Prime Minister, is the end of this government. And that at the latest in the beginning of 2025, the Prime Minister should go to the General Governor and ask for the dissolution of the Parliament in order for Quebecers and Canadians to compose a new Parliament that will have the mandate to deal with the real crisis at hand, which is the most important crisis in terms of diplomacy and trade between Canada and the United States in recent history. Somebody needs a mandate, and it goes through a new Parliament.
all right.
So Canada is like the public access channel version of America. Okay. America with a 10th, 1/20th the viewers and 1/50th the budget.
Fresh air by Canada.
Right. And no energy drinks, apparently. I mean, what's amazing is that you can be the Quebecois member of parliament and your English can still be that of maybe a first-year immigrant. You got
to lay it on thick. I mean, right? Isn't that, yeah.
Right. And so what I saw there as Martian ambassador reporting back to the mothership is a guy trying to get these Canadians who are all joking around and Seuss-like and acting like they're in a pub, and they're being, I would say, rather British in their comportment. But this guy coming from the French tradition, the somewhat more serious tradition, is like, what are these people doing? Something terrible is happening. We're facing this giant economic challenge and financial challenge, and the government just fell apart. Do they realize that? Why aren't they acting like it?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Justin Trudeau, who was such an asset for Canada as a PR mechanism, I guess, for years and years and years.
But for years and years and years, to me, he's looked like the YA young adult version of a prime minister. You know what I mean? He also, I think, mishandled COVID pretty terribly there.
Oh my God,
A-
no,
and
yeah.
and then he mishandled the protests over the vaccine pretty terribly. And I don't think I can remember when he had a master stroke or success, except with his hair, except with his comportment. He seems to always be in, losing weight a little bit more, in fact. And his hair is perfect and his dress is perfect. But
Yeah, he's like the werewolf in London,
and here he was last seen at Mar-a-Lago sitting with Trump, who's joking that, well, if they can't handle the tariffs and they're going to go bankrupt, we might just have to annex them and make them the 51st state. And frankly, they might have to be.
I mean, look, Trump has gone full troll with Canada. Canada has no response to this shit, or Justin Trudeau doesn't anyway. Canada has some funny people in it. Justin Trudeau is not one of them.
If you're funny in Canada, though, you come and you work for Saturday Night Live.
That's right.
Okay?
That's true. Yeah.
You follow the underground comedy railroad that Lorne Michaels has laid out, and you go down and write professional comedy. In Canada, only the amateur comedians are left.
Well, I mean, I'm still a big Kids in the Hall fan, but whatever.
Okay.
But yeah, mostly they come here, right? Jim Carrey, right? It goes from living in the car in Canada to living in Bel Air here or wherever it is. But look, Trudeau was on top of the world. I think the turning point, not just for him, but for a lot of things, was COVID, and when the trucker protests happened. And by the way, the person who quit the government today, Chrystia Freeland, and I can't stress enough that I knew this person very well at a different stage in her life, which makes this all very surreal for me. But she was the person who sort of went viral on social media when they decided to use emergency banking power to seize the assets of Canadian protesting truckers. If we could see that video, this was when they were sort of asking her about this, and she sort of laughs.
So you're confirming that accounts have been frozen, both personal and corporate, but you're not releasing the information. And the actual follow-up is, I'm just wondering whether the bank accounts will be targeted of individuals who donated to the Give, Send, Go and the GoFundMe campaigns.
Somebody showed her the Mark Twain colored card and said, don't laugh about people losing their bank accounts.
Financial services are targeting them as well.
Okay, so the names of both individuals and entities, as well as crypto wallets, have been shared by the RCMP with financial institutions, and accounts have been frozen.
Yes.
And more accounts will be frozen.
Okay.
Crowdfunding platforms and payment service providers have started the registration process with FinTrack.
Okay.
In terms of the specifics on whose accounts are being frozen, you now have the regulations. The financial service providers have those regulations as well. And they, working with law enforcement, will be making the operational decisions.
Operational. They're operational decisions. So that's the part of any politician's presentation when they've just laid out a tyrannical policy and a tyrannical action, where they tell you you're not going to get any more from them because we're tyrants. And what do you expect?
So the loss of that person who is known for implementing the way over the line sort of just arbitrary seizure of monies from protesters, and for being part of that. Remember that whole scheme with the bring the former Nazi to
Right. They brought the
to
former
Parliament.
Nazi to Parliament because he'd been Ukrainian, and they all stood up and applauded him. I think what's important to know for people is that Christina Freeland is a graduate of the World Economic Foundation finishing school for young Western leaders. Okay,
So is Trudeau, but
and so is Trudeau. So these are the people that many wish to see, not just out of power, but deeply humiliated. The people who laugh about things
hanging
like,
from something.
yes, the people who laugh about censorship, the people who really just laugh about people having their money taken away. Oh, wait, somebody's flashing me the yellow card, and then she goes from, I mean, so Schadenfreude in Canada tonight is reaching thermonuclear proportions, because everybody who got screwed by these people is not just hoping to see them, out of power, but hoping that there is no bottom to their suffering.
and for somebody like Trudeau, who is a sort of bottomlessly self-regarding person,
Right.
who has never had to deal with the idea of people genuinely disapproving. I mean, he's always had a fan base that he could turn to that would tell him, oh my God, you're so handsome, and you're so, social justicey.
Right. Yeah,
right?
yeah. With a perfume. But remember the last time we saw him, I don't know if you recall this on this show, he was dancing in the front row of a Taylor Swift concert in this kind of,
oh my God, yes, that's right,
awkward dad way that looked a little overly medicated. You know what I mean? A little ravey, a little MDMA. And so to go from that to this, but where is he? Have we seen him today? Is he?
I haven't seen him.
Is he in the
I'm looking.
Maple Leaf Suite at the, at the local Radisson Hotel, watching his world dissolve?
Well, remember when the trucker protest kind of hit the fan? Remember, he had to be removed to a quote unquote secret location because of the quote unquote security risks. Oh my God, people are there's so much trolling going on Twitter right now with him and pictures of him, because he has all those sort of quasi model like pictures of himself. The one with where he's got three buttons down and a beard. It's just fantastic. But no, I mean, look, he had so much just absolute worship from the traditional kind of ex-mainstream media after Trump got elected. And I wrote an article about this last week. One story in particular really stood out to me. It was a piece in the New York Times.
How long has he been in there? I can't even remember.
Since 2015, I think the summer of 2015. So he's been in power for a while. But they did a story called "With the Rise of Justin Trudeau, Canada is suddenly ... hip," and
hip in the way that the Osmond family was hip, compared to regular rock and roll. Hip in the way that, Pat Boone was hip compared to Elvis Presley. In other words, not hip, but hip-like.
Right. And the lead to that story, I'll just read a couple of sentences.
Dude, they have Justin Bieber in there. Isn't that him behind Trudeau? Right there? Yeah, that's him.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And there's what's his name? Ryan
Seacrest or whatever.
No,
Ryan Gosling. Yeah.
Ryan Gosling.
Another Mouseketeer. Yeah.
So talk about, hypnotic implants. Here is Justin Trudeau looking like the most serious member of the Mickey Mouse Club.
But look at that lead. Okay, last October at the Louis Vuitton Spring 2016 women's fashion show on the outskirts of Paris, a male beauty in a white T-shirt white and black bomber jacket and black pants, waded into a blizzard of flashbulbs and cries of Xavier. Anyway, a quick internet search would have told him that he was 26-year-old filmmaker Xavier Dolan, blah, blah, blah. And then it goes on to talk about something else, and it says his obscurity may have had something to do with the fact that he is from Canada, the country that gave the world ice hockey, the snowblower, and Labatt beer. But that notion that our neighbor to the north is a frozen cultural wasteland populated with hopelessly unstylish citizens is quickly becoming outdated because of Justin Trudeau, the muscular, blue-eyed, social media savvy son of the former Prime Minister.
Muscular.
Muscular.
Compared to what? Compared to what? A deer? Compared to a snake? What tells me, Matt, that at age 62, mano a mano, Justin and Walt in the octagon, I'd kick his ass. I just know. Maybe it's just because I know I'm meaner, but muscular. Well,
you'd bite him.
Did they talk about the whiteness of his teeth?
No. I mean, I don't think so. Did I find anything about his teeth? No.
Right,
I mean,
right.
I did find there was a piece that praised him for being
Dude, look at this story. Where again did it appear?
The Times, New York Times.
In the Times, it says, in the months since his election, Mr. Trudeau, 44, the 6 foot, they give his height, and it's the 6 foot self-described feminist. Wow, he's a 6 foot feminist. Boy, doesn't that square the circle? A muscular 6 foot tall feminist. What are you going to do about it?
6 feet of rock hard feminist.
And then okay, so they go after people like Tulsi Gabbard here. The Times goes after people like Kash Patel as ill-equipped to be a cabinet member. But here are, according to the Times, Justin's qualifications. He has been a television actor, a snowboarding instructor, and amateur boxer.
And I did not. Okay, the amateur boxer surprises me. I have to say, I didn't realize that one.
Very amateur boxer, I would say. An incredibly amateur boxer. The six. No, it reminds me of a wrestling introduction. And in this corner, Justin Trudeau, the Maple Leaf Terror. 6 feet of raw feminism, snowboard expertise.
The feminist fury.
The feminist fury.
Iron Justin Trudeau.
This is the damn New York Times. Wow. And then at the end of that same paragraph in which he's, called a snowboard instructor, we end with a kind of a lot of seriousness and pathos. He welcomed a plane load of Syrian refugees and said, "You're home now." Syrian refugees who went, "Dude, what a change this is from an ancient country full of warlords and
and beer swilling hockey fans."
Yeah,
we can't have that anymore.
To a country run by a snowboard instructor and former TV actor. Yeah.
And then after that, Esquire lost its fucking mind. Like that summer, they did a piece called just "Justin Trudeau is the best dressed man in politics," and it just triggered this avalanche of Trudeau as fashion plate stories that were just all over the media for years. And that was really mostly what we heard about him. He was the prime minister of cute socks or something like that, or witty socks.
Right. Okay. There's the evidence that he's best dressed. Let me.
Prime Minister of fun socks. Sorry.
Let me examine it. The belt. I don't know. The green open shirt that looks like, it's meant to be in a wet shirt contest or something.
I mean, look, he looks good. I'm not going to lie. I'm jealous. Right? I can't wear that shit. Louis C.K. said it best, that you have to be very confident to wear white pants as a man. Right?
Yeah. And you need bladder control too. but I'm going to stop for a second. This is like opening a time capsule, Matt, because when is this 2015, 16?
17.
Okay. Okay. This is like opening a time capsule.
We got to find the socks while Walter's talking. The Prime Minister of Fun Socks. There's a link in there somewhere.
So there he is with Obama. Wait, go down a little, go backwards. Go backwards.
Yeah, next to the equally well appointed
Next
Obama.
to the equally well appointed Obama. Okay, this is what I mean.
Well appointed was usually that was one of the terms that was almost always in conjunction with him.
So this is what I mean by a time capsule. This takes you back to a period where being good looking, being young, being well dressed, being praised in the fashion magazines, being burnished in these kind of lifestyle pieces that are also political pieces actually got you somewhere as a Western leader. This is before things got serious, in other words. This is before COVID. This is the long, silly period that preceded what happened afterwards. And this is when they installed the Macrons and the Trudeaus and all of those types. And mostly on the basis of how cute and next generation they were.
Yeah, so we have a listener, a watcher here, Mika, who's asking, so much news and you dwell on this. What's your point? Well, okay, our point is the government in Canada is about to fall. It was not falling previously because prior to some significant developments in global politics that it probably began with some of the overreaches during COVID, the populist backlash, the things like the trucker protests and some other things. As Walter says, if you could be good looking and sort of fulfill a cookie cutter neoliberal political program that you did not have to think about at all because it was it was already pre-prescribed. These leaders were they were all identical, basically policy-wise, from Obama to Macron. Clinton was one of the first ones. David Cameron.
Let's call them the sons of Tony Blair. You know,
right? The sons of Tony Blair, and they're all WEF world young global leaders.
And what was the Jacinda, whatever her name is in New Zealand?
New Zealand, yeah. Was she one of them? I can't remember. I'll look it up. Hang on a second. But there's so many of them. I mean, there was the Queen of Denmark. There's
the Mod Squad.
The Mod Squad, exactly.
The Davos Mod Squad.
The Davos Mod Squad, and Trudeau, what was really, especially after Trump got elected, he became almost like the substitute receptacle of press worship in the United States. Because it used to be whenever we had a new president elected, the press would just drop to its knees and fawn over whoever got elected, especially if it was somebody young, who could be shoehorned into that John F. Kennedy prototype, like Bill Clinton. The press went absolutely bonkers when Clinton got elected.
I have to call out Tyler McConnell. He has the best epithet here: the eyes wide shut people.
The eyes wide shut.
the people who, like Tom Cruise, would have showed up at a shadowy, villa in the outskirts of town where models dance naked and a dark lord with a hood raps his cane and chants backward satanic, verses. These were the eyes wide shut people for sure.
Yeah, Forum for Young Global Leaders. Let's see who else was on that list. Well, I'll call it up in a second here, but yeah, there were so many of them, and Trudeau basically he stepped into that role. 2016, 2017 was when he really became a star here in the United States, because Trump had been elected. We needed to focus on something positive in the media. And remember, all those celebrities were talking about moving to Canada after Trump got elected, and there was that moment where the immigration page crashed on election night in 2016. The Canadian immigration page, a lot of this had to do with Trudeau. Is this perception that this young, handsome, in control, progressive person was in office, and what killed this whole thing, not just for Trudeau, but for I think a lot of these leaders around the world, was the revelation that they were willing to go straight to 11 on the authoritarian scale whenever they got into trouble. And for Trudeau, it was the way they handled the banker protest situation, but also things like, we talk a lot about censorship on this program. Canada has the most horrifying censorship plans of any of the countries that we talk about, and
Right.
even putting England to shame. They have a bill that I think is probably going to fail now, C-63, which envisioned putting people under house arrest for things they haven't even said yet. That's still an active bill in Canada.
I still remember the show when we discussed that. It involved neighbors narking on you, and some process by which you would be judged likely to commit thought crime. And speech crime. But let's just stop for a moment for those who are waiting for the drone part of the show. I know that that's more exciting, and believe me, you're going to get your money's worth when we get there, because I'm loaded for bear. But it's important to see that when Trump was elected this last time, it is the exact opposite of what happened the time before. The time before, we had all these people in their ascendancy, okay? They were the incoming class. Trump looked like grouchy, scary populist from hell. And now he hasn't even been inaugurated. It's weeks still. And here goes Canada. Here goes their hood ornament WEF leader. And it seems that in England, Starmer's in trouble too.
Which they told us he wasn't, by the way, is pretty recently here in the States. Mm-hmm.
Well, they always tell you somebody's feeling perfectly right before they collapse. It's why not? Remember, it's the Seltzer poll in Iowa. Remember, the very weekend before you're humiliated, you get your best polling result ever from the best pollster. But anyway, it's legitimate to say that underneath all the smoke and all the strange stories that we're facing in America, abroad, let's check the actual effect of our Trump election, or of our presidential election. Abroad, things are starting to change, and change quickly.
Right. Yes.
And this all goes back to a threat from Trump. Remember, this is all about the tariffs.
Yeah, it's all about the tariffs, and reading between the lines, because no one really has been able to articulate for me what she means by we have to take this seriously and we can't afford any gimmicks. It sounds like what Christie was saying was that we need to make this go away, and so this tariff threat before it becomes damaging, because Trump is basically threatening a trade war with Canada. And look, the shit is funny a little bit. I'm sorry, it's not in a way, because
it's completely funny, because what Trump is threatening is to push over their house of cards, which is already tilting and has been for a while. And they're not well financially in Canada. They've got all our problems and worse, housing shortages, immigration crisis, crime, all papered over with a kind of ultra woke social justice veneer that people find increasingly a lot of people find increasingly noxious and irrelevant to their real lives. And so Trump is just, with the tariffs, he just is going bink, and there it goes. And he makes a joke about the 51st state. Today there are memes, with Elon Musk saying, so how much are you going to, how much is it going to be? What's your asking price? Like, the Great Canadian Fire Sale.
Yeah, and the way I described it in my piece is that Trudeau is sort of uniquely toolless in in a troll war. Almost
Right.
anybody could handle it better than he could, but anyway, it's not going to happen. We should move on to the drones.
Yes.
But if the government should fall in the middle of the show, we'll come back to it. But okay, so drones. There's a big new theory. We'll get to what that is in a second. You've talked about it already. We should start with Trump made a statement about it, and I don't know how to feel about this because on the one hand, he could he could actually solve the problem that he's talking about, but
no, he can't. What, Matt? He can only do that by divulging classified information. Look what happens to people when they do that against the Biden administration.
I guess that's true. Yeah. All right. Well, let's hear what he has to say.
Good to see you.
Can you comment on the drones that are flying around New Jersey ports? It seems like the American people have a big disconnect.
The government knows what is happening. Look, our military knows where they took off from. If it's a garage, they can go right into that garage. They know where it came from and where it went. And for some reason, they don't want to comment. And I think they'd be better off saying what it is. Our military knows and our president knows. And for some reason, they want to keep people in suspense. I can't imagine it's the enemy, because if it was the enemy, they'd blast it out. Even if they were late, they'd blast it. Something strange is going on. For some reason, they don't want to tell the people, and they should, because the people are really, I mean, they happen to be over Bedminster. Want to know the truth. They're very close to Bedminster. I think maybe I won't spend the weekend in Bedminster. I decided to cancel my trip.
Have you received an intelligence briefing on the drones?
I don't want to comment on that.
Have you been?
Do you have any reason to think they're?
Anyway, all right.
So to me, that was fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
To me, that was fascinating. Let's think about it for a second. An incoming president, and he has been briefed. It was obvious at the end that he didn't want to comment on it.
He has to be, by the way.
Yeah,
but anyway.
Right. And he has every right to be, especially because it involves his own safety. He was going to his golf course in the midst of this, chaotic spectacle. So they've told him things that he's not allowed to repeat. They're classified. They have to do with national security. But he is absolutely pissed off and annoyed that what he's been told can't be shared and won't be shared with the American people by authorities that are using our curiosity, using our fear, using our uncertainty to psyop us. Because whatever else is underneath this, this resolute refusal to explain what people are seeing in the skies is a psychological manipulation. What he's telling you is that there is no national security reason that overrides our right to know, because he knows and he's made that judgment. So they are trapping him in a situation in which he wants to tell the people something. He can't do it. He has a sense of their really arrogance and irresponsibility in not doing it themselves. And you Matt, right now said, well, he could say, but of course he's constrained from saying. And he also suggests it's very strange that they should tell the people what it is. Now, what does he mean by that? We still don't know. When he says that they're right over his golf course, it's almost as though he's being humiliated. He can't go to his own golf course now because things are flying over it.
He also said that thing about maybe I shouldn't spend the weekend at the golf course, which is might be a hint at the hot rumor that is going around Washington. So, I mean, you tweeted about this.
See, Matt, you recoil and everybody else does at the PSYOP word. But that is exactly what any situation in which the information is withheld at this level, while the primary and exciting data and spectacle is not withheld. They really think America can stand the suspense, as he called it, of seeing weird craft hover over their homes while the government tells them there's nothing to worry about. And then rumors, of course, come out on the internet that there may be some dire situation, and they're not addressed either. This may be a hunt for a lost nuclear weapon or something like that.
Let's just show this, because I don't know what happened with you this weekend, but I got the same clip from about
1,000 people.
Well, let's just say in terms of like people in government, probably 4 different people sent me this, including one fairly well-known elected official. So this is from Patriot Post, and I don't know. I can't tell you, whether this person is what kind of record for accuracy this person has, but I can tell you that some pretty significant people are reading this, which is interesting, or listening to this.
Hey everyone, my name is John Ferguson. I'm the CEO of Saxon Aerospace here in Wichita, Kansas. I'm not normally a TikTok kind of a guy. I like watching this stuff every once in a while, but I'm a manufacturer of unmanned aircraft, military grade unmanned aircraft. As you can see, one of my systems here. There's all of these mysterious drones going on off the East Coast, and as a professional, as a subject matter expert, I wanted to give you all my opinion on what I think could be going on with these drones. I don't particularly believe that these have a nefarious intent. I could be wrong, but I want to give you the truth and what I believe. It's my own opinion, and I've not bounced this off of anybody. So, if you think it's bullshit, whatever, that's cool. I don't want to spread misinformation, as we know that there's a lot of that going around. But anyway, back in the 1980s, Ronald Reagan had dismantled the nuclear program, and there were, with Russia, there were countless nuclear missiles that were disarmed and disposed of. Well, there were over 80, I believe. There were over 80 nuclear warheads that were in Ukraine that came up missing. Okay. We don't know where they are. Maybe somebody does, but nobody really knows where these are. And I speak with some pretty high level government officials.
Matt,
Yep. You want to
stop? This thing goes on for 8 minutes.
Okay.
There's 1 minute of content in this and 8 minutes of talking.
Okay.
And this is, the third time I've seen it. Mm-hmm. And I'm volunteering to be the resident crazy person.
Okay.
But I suggest that the kind of reporting that we need to do now is not go try to crack military secrecy and find out what's really going on, which is impossible, or somehow investigate. All we have are the documents and the artifacts they're putting in front of us, like this one. Now, I'm going to ask you a series of questions. This guy, you don't know who he is, right? You don't. You've never met him.
I mean, I looked at his site. That's the only thing I could do. But
but until you got the video, you didn't know who he was, right?
No.
He's got the American flag right behind him, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's a patriot. He's one of us. He's from Kansas, middle of the country, Walt's country. He just wants to tell us he's an expert. Now, after in the course of any of these stories, an expert always comes forth after the rumor phase. And this guy is literally telling us without pushback. In fact, he is being promoted by, you just said, a congressperson, that back when a bunch of nuclear warheads disappeared, and people like him know about it. It's common knowledge. We haven't been told about it apparently for what, decades? Okay.
Yeah, because
And-
it did come up, and I was actually at that press conference when it came up the first time. But
Right. And they just disappeared, and this has been going on all this time, and now they, to him, look like they are searching for one using drones. So what are we to think? We're now under nuclear threat in some kind of new way, a homeland way. What? When did it get here? It's been here for decades. Is that what you're saying? Or it was somewhere else and they just brought it here? What are you saying? This guy is getting us to swallow a Tom Clancy premise, the sum of all fears, where they blow up a football stadium. Okay. And it's just by the by, he's just a guy and he gets a viral video out of it. Very, very similar to the viral videos that came out at the beginning of COVID about this strange, terrible viral disease. Now, at the same time, he's saying this. He's a government contractor, right? That he just showed you. He makes these drones in his garage or whatever it is, and he sells them. But he's not afraid to blow the biggest classified secret that there may be. Oh, he doesn't think that's going to affect his business any? Really? He's the one to come out at the same and contradict the government that he sells to and the military that buys his products. He's going to be the truth teller, and he's apparently not nervous about it either. Give me a break, man. This, every time we have a COVID or a Russiagate or whatever it is, we go through a first stage in which the authorities don't want to talk. They even downplay things. But then various figures emerge with dark scenarios, and that gets passed around, and people get afraid. Then back to the authorities who are saying, we can't tell you more about this, but we want more power, which is exactly what Mayorkas did yesterday. He gave this sort of bland presentation about this isn't a problem, but I need more authority. Well, that's a contradiction. If there's nothing going on, then why do you need more authority to deal with it? We're being played, and I will be proved right. And I know I will be, because I can see now that we need to be literary critics, not reporters. There's no way we can get underneath a story about military exercises and national security and drones. But we can look at the patterns that have repeated themselves over and over. And we can look at the motive. Oh, it just happens to be a month before Trump is going to be inaugurated, and the East Coast is under threat from a nuclear weapon. And so what happened after this guy came out? Yesterday night, for the rest of the day, you had endless experts coming out and saying, we wouldn't need drones to sniff for nuclear weapons. We have satellites and other technologies that do that. Not a gamma ray escapes our notice in this world. And suddenly he was put back in his box. But at the same time, I can tell you as a fact, the rumor went around like crazy in higher circles. Let me at the risk of dominating, I'll just say this. Yesterday was a day that began with me talking to an incredibly highly placed source, okay? An incredibly highly placed source about the inauguration. And this person was responsible for some element of the inauguration. And I said, well, that'll be interesting. And they said, well, maybe it won't be interesting because it may not be the place to be with a loose nuke out there. And this was before this guy was circulating. Now, the person I was talking to is in a position to know. Okay. Then it went to my best sources. Suddenly I'm on the phone. Is there a loose nuke in the United States? And I have good ones. I have people, especially with this administration, who would know what's happening. And I also have access to people high in Hollywood and so on. Secretly, they're pulling their family members out of New Jersey and New York City.
Great.
Okay. All day yesterday, that was happening. I assure you. In the elite circles, there was a question as to whether Johnny gets yanked from that metropolitan area. And even with people somewhat adjacent or even near the red hot center of the Trump team. Then toward nightfall, it sort of cooled off. And today there's a feeling, especially after Trump's news conference, that what he's saying to them is, knock it off. We know what you're doing. We know you're not, you've created this near panic out of your withdrawal or reluctance to give information. I don't appreciate it. And I can't go to my own golf course. And he is pissed and he's gravely serious.
Yeah, no, he is. He's angry. He should be it, but he's also, I think, reflecting the general mood of the population, which is, I think, especially around here, similarly pissed off that we're not getting information. You know, I don't have the same kind of sources that you have in government or in the intelligence world. I probably know more people in Congress, and just selfishly, I made a few phone calls today, trying to find out what's going on. Like, is this really a thing? Nobody knows anything. Like, I had people just telling me, "Fuck if I know." Like, it was that kind of thing, and it's very frustrating. The only thing that you can piece together from the available information is that elected officials that are fairly, you know, the highest elected officials that New Jersey have met with people at DHS and other agencies.
Of course they have.
No, this has been announced, right? They people like Phil Murphy, that we know that they met with Mayorkas, and they've come out, they've made some very strange statements. There were some other statements saying that the lighting of these drones is in compliance with FAA regulations, which is also strange. But the main thing is that whatever these meetings are, whatever's being said at these meetings, they're not telling the public about them. Like, there was one Asbury Park official, like state legislator, who gave a handful of interesting observations about, them flying in swarms and having, unusually long battery power, but that's it. They haven't told us anything about the cause, which is just totally unacceptable, as you say, as Trump says.
But Matt, the whole story, it is a story because of their refusal to explain this in your face, somewhat threatening and at least dazzling phenomenon. In other words, so they can end it at any time. Now, whether we believe them or not, it is still in question. But they actually have pretended, and what Trump called bullshit on, not to know. Trump's message there was, of course they know, number one. And number two, if it was the enemy, they'd be doing something, so it's not. And he's leading you right to, I mean, you can lead a horse to water, but can you make him drink? The water he led us to was, if I am a Kremlinologist, which they have forced me to be, they've forced me into the hypothetical. They've forced me to become a scientist. There's no other way. And they've forced me to become a literary critic and a drama critic. And so what he's told me, as far as I can tell, is their stories are bullshit. If any of this was a real threat, they'd be doing something, and they aren't. I don't appreciate it. I can't tell you how I know the truth. I can't even tell you if I've been briefed about it, but you can suppose that I have been. And I don't like what they're doing. And the most affirmative statement he was saying was, they are toying with people. They are keeping people in suspense. And that is the definition of a psychological operation, to keep people in suspense when you need not do it, and you have not articulated a reason to do it. They haven't even said, for reasons of national security, we can't tell you. They won't even do that.
Yeah, so that's a problem. I mean, why not do that? I mean, it leads you to it forces you to play the logic game, right? This is like an LSAT question. What's the only possible explanation for this? If as Trump said, if it was the enemy, they'd be shooting them down. So it's not that. The officials, the few things that they've said is that these things, that they're not operating illegally, that there's no evidence that they're a threat, right? So that leaves something like, there is a national security threat that we are investigating, but we're not telling you about.
But Matt, they are triggering deliberately known psychological reactions.
No, I get
when
that.
When you have things flying at night over your house and you don't know what they are and they won't tell you what they are, that causes anxiety and fear.
Yeah,
when you suggest that there is an answer but you're not going to give it yet, that triggers suspense. When they know, as well as we do, that there was just a viral video suggesting it might be a nuclear weapon, and they allowed this contractor to go out and say it without any fear, to give a narrative that literally is a Tom Clancy novel, and he doesn't have any nervousness about his contract for his drones he builds in his garage. The whole thing starts to add up. When your only source of information is spokespeople who won't speak, and when the spokespeople's government is the suspect number one in the phenomena that they won't speak about, then you have psychological torture. And that's what's going on here. And Trump's coming out and saying, I don't like this. I can't believe they're doing this. That they are doing it. And he just shakes his head. In fact, he looked more sober and grown up and like the president than I've ever seen him in that little moment.
Yep.
And Matt, you're right there. Here's the test of what I'm saying. You're right there. You're a premier investigative reporter. You have great sources. They know that they can speak to you candidly and on background or off the record, and you will guard their identity and their words right up to the highest court. But you're not getting anything.
No, I'm not. Nobody's telling me anything. But that's not necessarily an indicator. But what is an indicator is, okay, let's roll back the clock a little bit. What happened in Russiagate? Russiagate starts
at exactly this time, before Trump is going to come into office. We spend all of December and early January, and then we find out later that they're having secret meetings, Susan Rice and Biden and Obama, right?
Yes, but there were all kinds of things we find out later. But what was the fascinating difference between then and now is that the New York Timeses and Washington Posts and CNNs of the world were full. They were packed full of unnamed sources from people familiar with the matter, giving us a minute by minute, blow by blow of what was really going on behind the scenes with this investigation, what the possible facts were. There are no people familiar with the matter giving us any theories
But that's because we can now safely say the objective of that operation at the time,
yes,
was to either even almost keep Trump from becoming president, totally hamstring him legally with an investigation that would come later. They'd already gathered evidence in some ways, and they were trying to delegitimize his presidency, legally tie him up, and in the mind of the public, cast him as a dubious, perhaps traitorous, treasonous character. So that was the goal then. I'm going to go out on a limb here because we can only look at this as a homicide detective would now. They have the means. They can put anything up in the sky they want. They have the motive. They're about to face this guy who they say is Hitler and is going to take revenge and throw them all in jail. And is going to oppose the deep state and end their wars and take away the gravy train. And they have opportunity, but they only have opportunity till January 20th, so they better damn well use it. This is what's going to happen as sure as the sun's going to come up in Montana tomorrow. We're going to get the networks on this soon. We're going to start to get higher level coverage. We're going to get more rumors. The question of whether there is a WMD search or not will constantly bedevil us from one side and constantly be poo-pooed by another side, but in a way that makes us uneasy. And then as the Trump inauguration approaches, as the giant celebration of MAGA, the victory
It's going to be
celebration.
freaking Independence Day.
No.
No?
No, it won't if they have their way, because I'm going to submit, and I have no compunction about being wrong. I have to offer hypotheses. But in the absence of information from the people who have it, the stubborn absence of information, I have to guess. And my best guess right now is that this is aimed at causing people not to want to attend the inauguration. This is aimed at giving people a mounting series of qualms about going to Washington that day. Why? Even the first Trump inauguration was kind of controversial, if you'll remember. Trump said it was the biggest crowd ever, and everybody else said, no, look at these pictures of an empty mall. Then what was the Biden inauguration like? Nothing. There were actual,
I can't even remember that did it happen? It happened.
Well, there were fences up all over Washington. Remember, there was
Yeah.
National Guard all over Washington. It occurred in a high security setting, so that if people didn't come, it wasn't any reflection on Biden's lack of popularity. You see, this inauguration will provide a vivid and global reflection of Trump's popularity. Okay, they don't want that. It will also obliterate a sacred day and a sacred image in the anti-Trump holy calendar, January 6th. This is like rewriting the hard drive with the inauguration so that January 6th, which is the last time we remember Trump supporters coming to town, is overwritten on the disk by, 1 million happy people in red hats. Now, some very shrewd person today said, this is why he invited Z. This is why he invited so many world leaders. It's his insurance policy. You can pull shit on me, but you're going to pull shit on the, president of China. This is my working hypothesis. I may change it tomorrow, and I will change it without guilt or without apology, because they're asking me to be a detective, so I'm going to be one.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And just to be clear, when I said it Independence Day, I meant the movie. So I was imagining like this, the sky dirty with alien craft or alien looking craft, and people freaked out and hiding and that sort of thing. It does make some sense. I have to say that theory makes some sense.
Somebody said Kern's gone full mad out with this difference. Okay. With this difference, I have sources, okay? You think I'm just talking out my butt? I just named or didn't describe a number of people who won't talk to me again if I name them. This is not out of some, nitrous oxide session at the dentist that I got these ideas.
No, Walter definitely has sources, and you can count on the fact that whatever we're saying here is pretty well informed from one side of the story.
And also, unlike Maddow, I'm not telling you I'm right. I'm telling you, this is what I'm working with based on what I know, what I'm hearing, and what I recognize as far as the patterns go.
Yeah. Yeah. And, look, the rest of this is just media analysis.
Sure.
We know that in some of these crises, they tell us an awful lot behind the scenes, and then in other ones, suddenly they don't know anything. They're not telling anybody anything, which is weird and frustrating.
Did you ever think you would live in America where unidentified aircraft flying at night over the most important metropolitan area in the country, the center of our financial system, almost globally, along with London, is and our government wouldn't comment on them? And they would allow viral rumors to proliferate, which is supposedly the whole reason. When that guy said, "I don't want to spread disinformation, there's a lot going around," I went,
Bing.
"Okay,
Yeah.
bing, bing, you're the Ray Epps of the drone story, dude, with your flag behind you and your mispronunciation of nuclear, even though you're in the damn business, and your suggestion that it's common knowledge among your crowd that there's 80 to 90 missing nukes floating around the world. Come on."
Yeah. Yeah. And the other strange part of this is the conspicuous absence of coverage of this in even the local.
Where's Joe Biden?
Okay,
Where's Kamala Harris? Where's Kamala Harris?
But
where's
nobody
Anthony
thinks they're
Blinken?
really the president anyway. Like just somebody who would ostensibly be a White House figure would like to hear from them.
The best we've gotten so far, John Kirby, Admiral Kirby,
yeah.
and Anthony and Mayorkas, who is one of the most accomplished liars in the cabinet.
Yeah, Kirby is the first person I've seen who is attached to this title that they pretend existed before, which is like national security spokesman. I don't remember there being such a person previously. Do you? Like national security, White House national security spokesman, John Kirby, and yeah, apart from him, we haven't heard from anything. The New Jersey press is on it. They have been doing stories on it, but you're not seeing it in the New York Times.
You will, however, because the reason I advanced the hypothesis I did is because it's testable. If it's accurate, that means you're going to see a slow ramping up, more rumors, the worst of which are scary, the most official of which are bland. But then there'll be a slight reasons to doubt among the bland ones where, wait, maybe they do know something. And Trump came out today and said, "Knock it off. I see what you're doing." Listen, Elon Musk, would you agree he has access to the inner circle of the Trump world, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how has he reacted to this story on Twitter? What Elon Musk did was he put up a list of hoaxes. He said, "How many of these have you fallen for?" It's on my Twitter right now if you want to go to it. And it was a long, long list from COVID to Russiagate to everything else.
Right.
And he was clearly saying, this is another one.
Yep.
And would you consider him a good source? Well, he's open source at this point, and he's telling you you're being had.
Right. Well, look, the rubber is going to have to meet the road. It's going to take an awful lot to stretch this out all the way to the inauguration and not take some kind of action. The state of New Jersey is drafting a bill to, I guess, shoot down these drones. Let me see if I can find that story here.
And Chris Christie went on. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know if he went on TV or why he was filmed, but the footage of him emerged saying people are going to start shooting these things down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But here's the things the government doesn't care about. people shooting at drones. 2, people
Right.
worried that loose nuclear weapons are on the East Coast. Apparently doesn't care. 3, among some, this is the big UFO invasion. These are aliens. And I hate to break it to you, but Matt, for the last 2 years, every once in a while, when I see a break in our conversation, I bring up the UFO topic. Because the UFO topic has been carefully, and I'm not saying deliberately, but inserted into our discourse over the last year. So there are a lot of people who've seen hearings about it, or they watch all the podcasts, and maybe they're sort of, mavens about this subject, who are, I can tell you, at a high level, this happened today too, talking about this being aliens. I'm talking about Ivy League professors. I'm talking about major investors. These are people who I have either talked to directly or have had someone of their caliber tell me they talked to, okay? Just today. And there is, if you were to draw a pie chart, there is a group of people, some of them estimable, who are holding open the idea that this is the visitation from the stars. So you think I'm crazy? I can tell you that people who have a zillion times more money and a lot more tenure at major Ivy League colleges that I don't have are far beyond me. And they're letting it all happen, and they're promoting it.
Right. Well, let me just play this story quick, because it just tells you that where the locals are on this. This is actually Fox. It's Rachel Campos Duffy from Fox and Friends, but if they're talking to I think my county sheriff.
Lawmakers desperate for answers as mystery drones buzz over New Jersey neighborhoods, including my own house. Now, one of them pushing a new bill suggested by our next guest that would let law enforcement shoot them out of the sky, which, by the way, President Trump suggested yesterday as well in a Truth Social post.
Monmouth County, New Jersey Sheriff Sean Golden joins us now. And I don't mind telling you, Sheriff, this is a circumstance where it seems obvious to just about everybody watching and listening. You can't say on the one hand, you have nothing to worry about. We have no evidence that this is a foreign power or nefarious. And at the same time, you're not telling us exactly what is over the skies of the Garden State.
Good morning. Great to be with you. And you're absolutely right. I mean, that's the frustration, I think, right up into President Trump, as he says, listen, if they're not ours, shoot them down, right? I mean, if this was a national security drill, we miserably failed. Drone technology is emerging so much faster, particularly in the defense field. And it's a matter of national security. And it's a matter of public safety here in New Jersey, right? And so when I got together and sent a letter to Congressman Smith, our congressman here in Monmouth and Ocean County, where we've had a number of such.
You get the idea, right? And
of all the times in history when they might do this, there would be no better time than now. And now is when they're doing it. Do you ever get the sense when you're watching something like what we just watched, that you're watching one of those fake news clips in a science fiction movie?
Oh, this is totally In Search Of, or whatever it is, right?
Every once in a while, they confused us back a few years ago when they started showing real CNN anchors in movies about fake panics, Contagion or whatever it might be. Well, this looks like the kind of news coverage that you would get in one of those movies, down to the sort of laughable local news look of those two anchors. Listen, why are they even doing this? They're interviewing a sheriff as though he has information when the head of Homeland Security has already told them there isn't any. Why are they going through this charade?
Well, I mean, the sheriff thing is it's significant because I think they will probably start shooting these things if the federal government doesn't step in and actually give them some answers. But to add to the unreality of the whole thing, a couple of days before Trump gave that that statement, he posted this, which is a still shot of a pretty funny joke. I don't know if have you seen this yet? This is
Oh yeah.
This is hang on a second. Here's the. I mean, as these things go, that's pretty good, I have to say.
Okay, Matt. That little meme, that AI meme, just reminded me of something. 9/11. Matt, come on. This country and history was changed by 2 aircraft, just 2, flying into giant skyscrapers in New York City. Okay? Now we're being told that any number of mysterious craft can fly around in the same place, and we are being I'm going to submit, and I'm not going to back off. I don't care if you call me Rachel Maddow, Nostradamus, or the mad prophet of some mad prophet from the Bible. We are being told the country that had 9/11 a few miles away from there, that aircraft flying around at night
big deal.
Is no big deal. No wonder people are anxious. Hey, remember that 9/11 thing? Say we saw planes flying, craft flying around for weeks before that, and you told us it was nothing. Well,
No.
we'd be pretty pissed if then the end you were like, didn't expect 9/11. Now they're giving us a far more ominous scenario of, and remember, they can also be responsible for the rumors, because just because they're the government doesn't mean that some of the rumors might not be authorized, or just as it happened. And how many cutouts did they use for their rumors in Russiagate? I mean,
That's true. And look,
everything from professors to low level, Trump workers, all these cutouts, then we find out know each other. Are we going to be like Charlie Brown and Lucy with the football for the rest of time? Because each time we go, but the authorities would tell us. No, the authorities are the ones who start these things. And I'm telling you that my sources, who are as good as I have ever had at any time in my life as a journalist, on the inside of this place, say this stinks.
Yeah. Well, no, it makes sense too, because when I think back about, well, how did we know Russiagate was crap? One of the best ways we know, looking back, is that we know exactly when the FBI found out, for instance, that the P-tape story was wrong and unreliable, and they never told anybody that that they should stay away from that story. James Comey testifies before Congress as Adam Schiff is sitting right next to him, telling the P-tape story, basically, and doesn't say anything a month after they had already done that investigation. So when the government doesn't squash a story it knows is not true, they're in on it, and to either a large degree or a small one, right?
And the corollary phenomena, the complementary phenomena, is when they do try to squash a story that they know is true, which they also do. See Hunter Biden laptop and 51 former intelligence and security officials. The day they did that, the day that they lied about the Hunter Biden laptop, whatever you think about the gravity of the story, the day that 51 people came out and signed their names to what they knew was basically disinformation, and the day that social media agreed to silence the dissenting New York Post, and then behind the scenes rig up a machine that would automatically suppress this story, was the day we should have stopped listening to them altogether.
Yeah. Yeah,
but here we are, still waiting like little pigeons for Mr. Old Man on the park bench to throw us our crumbs so we can peck at them.
No, I know. I don't know what to tell you, Walter. I can't get it out of my head that there is a line that the government won't cross, but it's been proven repeatedly that they will cross almost any line. They've refused to tell us key information about things like Nord Stream, allowed us to believe the silliest stories about that, about COVID origins,
about weapons. What I have a test for you. What if they told the truth about it this level recently in the last like 20 years?
Yeah, no, that's a good one. I mean, think about it. Even Libya, right, with the rape camps or whatever it was, that story turned out not to be true, and they quietly covered that one up. No, that wasn't it. The Viagra story. Remember that? That they were passing those out.
You see, when you're in the middle of a presidential election, say, you know that everything you're looking at is a psyop because it's a campaign. It's named a campaign. You expect different levels of deception in a campaign. You know they're going to lie. You know they're going to exaggerate. You know they're going to use celebrity spokesmen to back them up. You know they're going to create incidents, which they then jump on with their friendly press and play up. You know they're going to do that during a presidential election. But supposedly everybody goes back to just like normal rules, CBS Edward R. Murrow rules from 1958, as soon as that's over. No, just like Christmas comes earlier and earlier every year, and just like the elections seem to start earlier, well, we have now reached permanent campaign, and everything is used and optimized in a way to help you and hurt your enemies, and all the resources and all the institutions that are supposed to be separate and supposed to have ethics have been proved to be at minimum extremely flexible in those ethics. So that's the presumption. It's a presumption of guilt, and that's the presumption that our founding fathers asked us to have.
Yep.
Edward R. Maddow. That's great.
Edward R. Maddow. Yeah, somebody asked before what my best guess is about what all this stuff is, and I don't know. Clearly, I've been trying to get some kind of information, but the only thing that makes sense to me is that it's an overreaction to either a real or imagined security threat that we're not being told details about. So, for anybody who works in the government, who's ever worked in sort of national security, in the national security world, and this came up, for instance, with Bountygate. The government hears 10 billion things a day, right?
But Matt, if someone had asked you that question on January 5th, before Trump was inaugurated in 2017, what's your best guess about what's going on here? Would you have ever guessed that, well, what's happening is a sophisticated intelligence operation using reporters, various FBI elements, politicians, governments abroad, has been mounted to create the impression out of really nothing that Donald Trump is a Russian spy, and documents have been basically created to lend credence to this, and they're being passed around at the highest level in the legitimate press. And in fact, the whole thing is being motivated by a political operation that finally traces back to Hillary Clinton. If you had given that answer, which is the correct answer, by the way, they would have said you were Maddow times 1,000.
Oh, I know. And well, as it is, it's funny. The last time I was on MSNBC, apart from my disastrous Mehdi Hasan interview, which wasn't really MSNBC, that was Peacock. But the last time I was on the real MSNBC was with Chris Hayes. I think maybe on that date or around that date, in January of 2017, I was on with Malcolm Nance of all people, and I was saying exactly what we're saying right now. I said, look, whatever they have, they've got to tell us what it is. This is the Super Bowl of intelligence dramas. If we only have a few weeks until Trump is inaugurated. If he's actually a Russian spy, they got to tell us right now. There's no, they can't delay. And by then, it was already abundantly clear that there was no middle ground with this story. It was either the biggest intelligence, story of all time, like the coup by Russia, or it was the biggest psyop fake of all time. Because there's nothing else it could be. I mean, I didn't say that, but I did say that they had to tell us whatever they had. And
Matt, when you lived in Russia, or they were between governments, or there was some uncertainty about who was ruling, and you heard a story about a helicopter crash, did you go, well, my guess is that it's a helicopter crash? Or did you think it's probably an assassination? In other words, why do you think that over here in the United States right now, the rules of skepticism, absolute black, satirical, Joseph Heller style disbelief don't apply? Because we're Team America.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up. I personally knew two people who I think were assassinated in helicopter crashes. One was the editor of a magazine called Top Secret. His name is Artyom Borovik. He was sort of maybe kind of like the Mike Wallace of Russia. He was a very famous investigative reporter. He died, quote unquote, in a helicopter crash. And the other one was Alexander Lebed, who ran for president in 1996. He was the secretary of the Security Council under Yeltsin, sort of like the Norman Schwarzkopf of Russia. Famous guy, extremely interesting and funny, former boxer. And why do I bring him up? Because he is the source of the missing nuclear weapon story. In 1996, while he was running for president, he gave a press conference, and he shocked everybody in attendance by saying, "Oh, by the way, there are 100 suitcase-sized nuclear devices that have gone missing since the collapse of the Soviet Union." And it's a major security issue, and we should probably try to tighten that up. Anyway, Lebed also died in a helicopter crash later, after he was being governor of the Krasnoyarsk province in Siberia. But no, of course, when we hear these stories, nobody thinks, "Oh, wow, those helicopters really need to work on their upkeep." No, of course not. Nobody took those stories seriously as anything but assassinations, or as shady, in the best case back then.
So in other words, you held them to the standards which you felt they deserved, which were basically presumed lying, presumed political operation, presumed cover up. The country that told us nothing to worry about when Chernobyl melts down at first, and you held them to those standards. Well, my suggestion for our audience is that we should start holding our people to those standards, because they have shown they deserve no less. Listen, if only because they haven't kept their reputations, they deserve to be thought of this way. Okay, I'll give you a little story. One time I was at a Las Vegas psychic show with my wife, and right before the show started, right before the psychic was going to tell everybody amazing things that no one could know about where they were from and who their relatives were and so on, I ran out to grab a Coke at the bar outside the showroom, and I saw somebody who I had recognized standing behind the stage running up to the bartender and grabbing a bunch of notes that he'd given. And he had his credit card machine there. And I was like, oh my God, the guy gets the names of the audience members from the credit card receipts, hands them to the psychic's assistant. They go back, do a bunch of internet searches, find out where a certain number of the audience is from. They have some code, in which they signal the guy in the sweater is the next one we're going to guess about. Now, later, I told people this story. And you know what they called me? Rachel Maddow. Don't you trust bartenders in Las Vegas? Right. At psychic magic shows? And there's a reflex in people. Don't ruin it for me.
No, that's true. That's absolutely true. There's a thing that, and I guess I still suffer from this inability to accept that it could be as messed up as it is.
But Matt, you don't suffer from it. God bless you. You have to suffer from it, and no one could blame you, because the entire premise of investigative reporting is that there is a reality to be found. It's not just lies, and accomplices that you would never guess working together, and that you can make a difference by showing these people and shaming them. But once the truth no longer shames them, once they can be caught over and over again, and once the people in the press can be shown to be wrong over and over again, and they just keep getting promotions, and once Nate Silver can do poll after poll and tell you that he's the wizard of polling, and other people will say so too, and he's wrong every time, or Jim Cramer, then you finally get to a stage where you're like, wait, let's reverse the polarity here.
I mean, the reverse Kramer index is like one of the funniest things in American finance, where people bet on everything that he doesn't recommend.
So I'm going to say reverse John Kirby. That's going to be a new rule.
The reverse Kirby. That might be the best way to interpret the news. And the last thing I'll say about this before we move, there's one other thing I want to bring up that's like less serious, but the last thing I'll say about this is, this is going to be a test for the Trump administration. They've inherited a situation where the credibility of the government is zero, basically. And if they don't do better about with stuff like this, with telling painful truths, with avoiding big lies,
they're already doing better. He just did better than all of them. In 2 minutes.
I agree. And also we know who the president is, which is a big help. But look, I'm just saying they have to be aware that they're being handed the ball, they can't drop it, So
but they created this narrative around Trump that when Trump's in office, it's just chaos. Aren't you tired of the chaos? Don't you want to go back to normal with Joe Biden? Don't you want to go back to norms and standards and of the kind that were praised just a few weeks ago, when it was thought he would never pardon his son because his respect for the rule of law is so great?
Right.
You saw people practically weeping in adoration for Joe's reverence for the rule of law compared to the 34-time convicted felon and department store rapist Donald Trump.
Well, that whole thing.
So now
we're going to have to get into that at some point too, by the way. But yeah.
So yeah. Oh, by the way, in news you weren't watching, ABC and George Stephanopoulos just had to settle for $15 million for overstating or lying about Trump's criminality. But in any case, what I'm saying is that Trump is thought to be this chaos bringer, when in fact, the chaos is coming from him. I mean, coming from his adversaries. Oh, he's supposed to uphold these huge standards of probity and honesty and consistency while trying to do a good job, and while they're just trying to muddy the waters. Listen, they have no incentive to leave anything standing, and they're not. They're throwing missiles into Russia for the first time in history. I mean, oh, have you heard about Ukraine today? No, drones.
Yeah, no, I know.
Did you hear about it yesterday for a week and a half? No. Oh,
Syria, this whole thing in, I mean, the drone thing in New Jersey, it's a nightmare, and the public is completely in the dark about all this stuff. So that disease origins, all these things, like, but what I'm saying is they got to do better, and they got to not politicize it, and so we'll see. I think we should wait for the next show to talk about the Stephanopoulos thing, because that's actually a big media story that well, it has the potential to be a big media story, because that's just one example of about a billion potential libel actions that are sitting out there to be discussed. And, people are freaking out about it as if the settlement's excessive. Whereas, a lot of us over the last 8 years have wondered, like, what happened to the libel laws? Are we allowed to just break those now? Anyway, we'll see. We did have one viewer who asked a question that is a little bit lighter, and it might be a little bit fun for us to answer.
Okay, watch this. Watch this. I'm Will Rogers now.
There you go. Okay, Will Rogers. Somebody asked Walter for you to recommend a good novel.
Well, of what type? Let me think. Out of this,
because we always talk about short stories.
Yeah.
We can get into some of our favorite novels in a few minutes.
Well, we should all just be reading Philip K. Dick nonstop right now, okay?
Do androids dream of electric sleep? That kind of a thing.
Right.
That's a story, I guess. Right. But yeah.
And I would suggest the novel, and forget the movie, but read the book, A Scanner Darkly, because it tells the story, and it's a great parable for what we're talking about, of a narcotics investigator whose job is to go undercover in the kind of hippie scene in Southern California and buy drugs. And this narcotics investigator, who has to pose as a drug user, is also a drug user. And he's got surveillance equipment in his own house, okay? And it turns out that he's basically involved in all levels of the plot without knowing it. And that not to spoil it for you, this doesn't really, it also has to do with the rehab industry, people getting off drugs. And we find out that the people who get you off drugs are the same people who get you on them.
Well, that sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah. Right. And the book is a kind of, how can I put it? Not worst case scenario, but a thought experiment in which people who are supposedly on the right side are in the wrong side, where the cops are also the suspects. And it will show you in a very elegant way. And he has to pull some science fiction tricks to make this point, just as he had to pull them to make, Minority Report work, with psychics who see pre-crime. But once you've read it, your head will be bent into a shape that it needs to be if you are to see things now and see the possibilities. Because I think at a minimum, we have to realize that the suspects are often the perpetrators, and the perpetrators are often the authorities.
Yeah. When I first got into Philip K. Dick, I was in the middle of a pretty heavy drug abusing period of my life, and I thought, wow, this stuff is really
Matt,
good.
you can't just say drugs generically. They're all so different.
Well,
which kind?
Because I was taking all of them at that time. So, but I thought this is great stuff, but it's only because I'm so fucking high that it makes sense. Now, I read Philip K. Dick, and it feels just like reality to me. So, I definitely second that recommendation. His his work is it is one of those things where you do have to rewire your head to try to change what your expectations about things are, and I think that those stories are great for doing that.
And everybody knows Blade Runner, and what's the central puzzle or reveal in Blade Runner? It's that he's hunting robots, he's hunting these lifelike robots while being in love with one. Okay,
right. Right.
Well, there's a question whether he's one himself.
Yeah, because there's a cool metaphor, like what does humanity really mean, that kind of a thing, which is now relevant with the whole AI question and everything. So,
but these are not mere entertainments, and there's a real. So at the time Philip K. Dick was writing in the 60s, well, he started in the 50s, but let's say at the peak of his output in the 60s and 70s, the big science fiction writers were people like Robert Heinlein and Isaac Asimov. I mean, where are they today? They've made a few movies, Starship Troopers or iRobot. But Dick, they are literally scraping his, grocery lists for movie ideas. I mean, Dick, the Rachel Maddow of his time, the is now actually a describer of current reality, while those others look like the people who told us there would be flying cars.
Right. Yes, exactly. That's right. Yeah. They seem unreal. He seems real. Well, I'll give one recommendation that's it's not maybe as inventive, but it's Evil and Want Scoop.
Oh yeah.
And people who are not in the media business, I've discovered, often don't know this book. I think every reporter in the world has a copy of this book somewhere, like a dog-eared copy of it, and it's a story about. I mean, the premise of it is hilarious. It's a gardening columnist in England who gets mistaken he has the same last name as some swashbuckling foreign correspondent, and so he gets summoned by his newspaper to go cover the wars in Abyssinia by mistaken identity. He's a guy who writes about the larch or whatever it is, and they dispatch this basically rural British gardening columnist to cover the savage civil war in Africa. And the book is great in that it describes with uncanny accuracy how completely without morals people in the media business are, and how they're willing to print literally anything that will sell, and with no regard whatsoever for factuality or that's not even an issue for the editors in the story. And I was just starting out in the business when I read that book for the first time, and I thought, okay, they're overdoing it a little bit. They're not. It turns out that book was sort of a burn on British Fleet Street journalists, but actually, I think they're pretty much underselling how bad it is if you look at it in terms of today. I don't know. What was your impression of that book, Walter?
Well, all of Waugh is line by line hilarious and perfect, and observed in a way that nobody else can observe. It's not just laugh out loud funny, which it is at times, but it's so deeply, profoundly right on about things. The word choice, it's just like scalpel after scalpel. So it's a terrific book. It used to be the consensus, going back to Twain, who we started with. Twain, who said, what did he say? If you read the papers, if you don't read the papers, you're uninformed. If you read the papers, you're misinformed. Mm-hmm. That's all I'm saying. How did it become controversial again?
No. It's you're absolutely right.
I have another novel that just came to my mind for people who don't want something quite as arch as a Scanner Darkly or Scoop. Maybe a dramatic novel that's a little meatier. The Quiet American by Graham Greene,
Ah,
a book about Vietnam in which an American intelligence agent who's observed by an old British, journalist, I believe, an American intelligence agent starts a rebel movement. Okay, he creates a rebel movement in order to push out or push in a new leader in South Vietnam, and does it without any conscience. In fact, it's got the line, behind every crime or something, you'll find a Harvard man. Behind every great, political crime. So in The Quiet American, this very young, intelligent, good-looking agent basically starts a bloody rebellion, playing both ends against the middle, literally paying them to do it. And there's a terrible bomb blast, and many people are injured.
Kids, yeah.
Yeah, all just to, get leverage over the politics of South Vietnam. Now, Graham Greene is not a liar. He was one of the most acute and well-informed and well-traveled observers of how we act.
And participant in intelligence.
And a great journalist and an intelligence asset, even an agent. So you're telling me that what Graham Greene observed about the world has suddenly not has fallen to crazy hypothesis, when he was giving his years, his days, and months to writing novels that he hoped would show us how things really worked?
Yeah, and the central thesis of The Quiet American is that he was exposing, kind of in larval form, a new kind of world leader supplanting the old British Empire, that was completely without conscience about lying to the public, and for
and in fact believed it was his duty.
Exactly, believed it was his duty. It was a great contrast with the old British conception of duty, whereas the Americans believed that it was their duty to lie and
blow up and get people to blow up kids and supply the explosives for it.
Yep.
The way I knew about The Quiet American was that in 1979 at Macalester College in St. Paul, I took a course on the Vietnam War from a leading participant in the State Department's running of the Vietnam War. Okay. The war has only been over for 4 years in 1979. And I have a high State Department professor giving me a class, and the rest of us, on how it really worked. What is his first book? If you want to know what really went on in Vietnam, read The Quiet American.
Yeah, because it also describes the beginning. It's sort of time-wise, it's at the beginning of the war, when the French were still relevant and everything.
Right.
But no, that's a great one. Our Man in Havana is my other favorite. Oh, The Honorary Consul. I love that. They're all so great. Those writers are all so amazing. I'm so jealous of all of them. But we've given you, three really good ones. So maybe we'll toss in a few at the end of these shows from now on. But I think
go read Huckleberry Finn again for the chapters on the Duke and the Dauphin, the fake aristocrats on the Mississippi River who go from town to town pretending to be British royalty, and taking everybody's money.
Yeah, that is it. Well, I still think, for my money, the first 130 pages of Huck are the best novel writing ever. But
I wouldn't disagree with you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming to hang out. Really appreciate it. Walter, thank you for taking time out.
Can we satisfy anybody's curiosity about whether the Canadian government has fallen during this live stream?
Yeah, I'll take a look if you can keep them occupied for a moment here. Hang on a second. Do you have any other of those books from those folks? Hang on a sec.
From the people we just named?
Yeah.
Well, Dick is endlessly good, but once you've satisfied yourself with books like A Scanner Darkly, the final masterpiece that really reveals his nature and his psyche and his way of thinking and his illness, because he wasn't a stable person in a lot of ways, is called Valis. VALIS, vast something, a living intelligence system. Because toward the end of his life, Dick, unfortunately, came to the
too much speed and looked out his windows too much.
He came to the conclusion that I am trying not to come to, that everything from the nature of, atomic reality, not just to the news, which can be easily faked, but to history and philosophy, was a vast conspiracy. And only he was onto it. And he's, after he wrote this novel, he wrote thousands of pages of a book that's kind of never come together, trying to elucidate the plot.
God, I hate. There are numerous author stories like that, and those terrify me. Like I'm afraid of being one of those people that writes thousands of pages that nobody reads at the end of his life. Although maybe that's yeah.
But he wrote before that, he wrote many thousands that people can't stop reading. So sometimes the price you pay for being a specialist. I mean, Isaac Newton, discovered gravity and the laws of, Newtonian physics, but he also believed he knew when the apocalypse was coming, and he would spend endless amount of time analyzing the Bible and numerology and other, what we would consider absolutely crackpot sources, to get the exact date of when the world would end.
Yeah, Yeats too. He wrote a whole book about the poem "The Second Coming" and the theories behind it. Anyway, we can go on forever about this.
Right.
But those are great starts. Maybe we can work this in as a new feature for Mondays. But thanks everybody. Thanks for hanging out. We will maybe see you next week. We'll make an announcement by the end of next week, because next week's the holidays. So, but we'll see you soon, Walter. I'll talk to you soon.
We'll see you then.